Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, for those of you I have not personally invited to come to this session, I'd like to say welcome. I'm Greg Clinton. I'm at North Carolina State University in Durham, North Carolina. The title of this session is Getting Professors to Do What Comes Naturally. My background is I've been a consultant in private practice to law firms and churches for a number of years prior to coming to North Carolina Central. And I was at the cutting edge of technology at some of those firms and getting them to use new products. And at one firm that was really cutting edge, every time something new came out, he wanted it. So for a good while, I've just been working on new technology. I remember when my daughter was younger, she asked me, "Dad, what do you do?" And so I tried to get people to use technology. And finally, she gave me a definition for technology I'd like to share with you. Her definition for technology is anything that makes something easier. And I like that. I like to think about voice activation as something that makes your work easier. Today we're going to have the overview is we're going to talk about intro to voice activation, and then we'll go to how I got the faculty to actually use voice activation, followed by a video presentation. We'll then do a demonstration and follow with questions and answers. Voice activation. My first introduction to voice activation was with Captain Kirk in Star Trek. And since that time, voice activation has come a long way. Some of you might recall Compaq trying to use voice activation in the early 90s, and that didn't work. That was like a failure. And then, now I think voice activation is here to stay. The reason I think it's here to stay is because we have more vendors in the market. We have IBM in the market with VIA Voice. We have a number of vendors in the market who's put in a substantial amount of R&D to develop this technology. We have more consumer demand for the product now. More people are trying to find easier ways to do their work. Now, a lot of people who are just new to computers and cannot type or just are afraid of computers for whatever reason. And they're driven towards simpler usage of technology, and particularly computers. Future of voice activation. Voice activation, I think, is only going to get better as time goes along. You're seeing now within the medical profession, as well as in the legal profession, industry-specific applications. Their Dragon, and that's what we'll talk about today, has special application just for the legal industry. It's called Dragon's Legal Suite, and they have a special application for the medical profession. As well as religious organizations, I think, will start to have a special application for that, as well as consulting. You'll see a lot of the voice activation will allow for you to do time and billing too. Telecommunications is already using voice activation whenever you're trying to use the telephone and you don't have a touch-tone phone. They'll tell you to speak the words, speak your choice. So that's another form of it. The future with Dragon, their newer products are coming out with true continuous speech recognition, where you're getting at least 160 words per minute and more without pausing. And that's with the Legal Suite. I think I have a copy of the Legal Suite. The Legal Suite, and that runs about $799. This is the Legal Suite, and gives you the specs on it. It requires, and it requires a Pentium machine, 233 or 166 or better, and 64 megs of RAM. The accuracy rate is increasing. I remember voice activation for a while. You were lucky to get 65, 70% accuracy rate. Those rates are increasing substantially. PC Magazine, I think in January, there's an article that gave Dragon voice activation a 95% accuracy rate. The newer technology it's even going to push that accuracy rate up to 98%. How I got professors to use voice activation. I offered them money. That didn't work, and believe that, that's interesting. Lawyers not wanting money. But what I did was I targeted members of the faculty who would benefit most from the usage of voice activation. And there were about 5 of them I targeted before we actually proceeded with ordering the application. One professor in particular was at the university for at least 17 years and was a loyal WordPerfect 5.1 fan. In fact, when I was hired, which almost less than a year ago, in the interview he came in and he said, I love WordPerfect 5.1, I always use it, I always will use it. And if you get this position, will you make me change? And I said, no. And he's one of the professors you'll see later on the video, because when we talked about him going to voice activation, he was reluctant and he was kicking and screaming. But the issue was that in December with Y2K, we're going to have to get rid of WordPerfect 5.1 anyway, so you might as well go to Corel 8 and use voice activation. So he was reluctantly, but he was interested in trying. You really also have to understand the faculty fear of change. I think we, as individuals, are typically prone not to change. I remember years ago I used to hear this comment that change, there's nothing more permanent than change. And then a client of mine once I told him that statement once, he said, well, Greg, that's true. There's nothing more permanent than change. But just because change is inevitable doesn't mean progress is. And when I'm trying to evaluate new technology, I want to make sure that it's going to allow somebody to do their job better and more efficiently than what they're currently doing. So I understand that concept of change and the people's reluctance to change. Also, I had to work in small groups. I had a client once who worked for a pretty nice-sized law firm who resisted technology, and their firm was a cutting technology firm. And that was in the days when computers really cost some real money, like $5,000 or so. So this firm had invested $5,000 per attorney to use computers. And this particular attorney used his computer only as a calculator. And in order to get him to change that pattern, I had to deal with him on a one-on-one basis because he was a partner in the firm. He didn't want anyone else to know that he couldn't use the computer. And there are all types of ego issues that are associated with people who are supposed to be at a certain level, thinking that they know all the answers. So in his case, he's become a very good computer user. So I had to use that same strategy in talking to the faculty, getting them in groups of peers, one-on-one, or in 2 or 3 people at a time in sessions like that. And that worked out real well. Also, you have to monitor the successes and failures and use them to improve the implementation strategy. Whenever you're testing new technology, there's a learning curve. And you have to caution people prior to using it that there's a learning curve. There are going to be some failures and there are going to be successes. But the more we learn from it, the better we get an overall enhanced usage from it. So I wanted to know what they were doing, how they were doing it, what successes they had, and what failures they had. Because there are some people who, after the first few moments, after the first few, sessions of Dragon, decided that it wasn't for them and that they didn't want to use it. And then there are some who felt that way, but after we talked about it, decided to give it additional tries, and it became very useful for them. Also, you need to make sure you have the appropriate equipment in order to run Dragon. when you're trying something new like voice activation, it's going to be terribly hard to get people to use it if you don't have the appropriate equipment. And that means that you need at least a Pentium 166. I really recommend a Pentium 200 or greater, 64 megabytes of RAM. The minimum cost for 48, but when you're using 32 megabytes, it's actually for Dragon itself. And another 16 megabytes are for the Corel, WordPerfect, or Microsoft Word if you're going to use those applications. You're going to need at least 160 megabyte of hard disk space, and 120 is for Dragon itself, 40 is for the recorded speech files. Now, the recorded speech files are, as you use voice activation, each time you use it, it'll ask you when you're done with it if you want to save your speech file, which allows for the computer to continuously learn your voice. You're going to need a sound card with that. A 16-bit sound card or built-in audio system with input sound quality equal to or greater than the Creative Lab Soundcaster 16. And of course, you're going to need speakers, and you're going to need a headset with a voice enhancer. Dragon comes with a headset that looks like this, and these are the standard. This is what comes with the standard legal suite. However, what we did, we got a good deal on Dragon, the academic version, and we got the enhanced headset that has the Parrot amplifier, which improves the performance tremendously. The good deal is they've got the academic version for I think $30 for each headset, and that included the software. However, we didn't get any documentation. So, how we compensated for it, Dragon has these professional partners throughout the United States who have documentation, as well as they will come in and train in one setting. There's a company in CALI called Image Consulting, and they'll give you their Dragon shortcuts, and they will train as many people as you'd like in a one-day setting. I think they range anywhere from $700 a day to $1,000 a day, but that's unlimited number of people in this session. Well, the next part of the presentation, we actually go to the video part. And on the video, what we're going to do, we're actually going to see people using the application to tell you some of their success and horror stories. Well, let's see.
I was skeptical, to say it best, because who would have ever thought that I could speak and see my works produced on the screen? But in fact, the program works extremely well. I become a true believer of the program and feel that it will enhance input productivity. The problem that most people think is, well, how long will it take for the program to adapt to my voice or to his or her voice? It doesn't take that long. You will have to go through several sessions, sitting down at the program and reading different excerpts from different books or magazines. The program will provide you several types of reading, whether it be humorous, scientific, or fiction. And getting the machine to adapt to my voice, I started out first in training for an hour, and then subsequently tried to train at least 20 minutes thereafter for about 2 weeks, working consistently with it and trying to use the machine to adjust to my voice. A program like this will help you in your productivity and your efficiency. For me, I often have to cite things from a text, and before I would have to look at the text and then type it. Now, all I have to do is pick up the text, for example, and read. Crafting a class versus writing applicants. There it is, right there on the page. So you have to work with the machine. That is, repeat the testing and voice recognition section of the program. Go over it 20 minutes a day until you find that it's picking up your voice and recognizing your voice. You'll find out that it's an increase in efficiency and accuracy as you go along. As I say, right now mine is working about 85 to 90%.
My name is Jim Beckwith. I'm second senior member of our faculty, and I teach contracts, commercial law, a lot of the business stuff. And I'm not a very topicist. And I think that had a lot to do with my attraction to naturally speaking and being trained in its use. As to how I felt about the software before I used it, I guess I was naive and expected it would just be absolutely simple and self-effectuating, so that I really didn't have to do much and sit back. And it was more difficult than I realized. I thought it would be easier than it actually turned out to be. But I'm very happy that I went through the learning curve, because it has some very salutary effects, the way I organize my life. And it may not be for everyone, particularly those who are very good typists to start with. The learning curve, of course, you go through the exercise of reading the textual excerpt to train the software to recognize your voice. With me, I have a very distinctive Southern accent, and I don't intend to change it to satisfy the software purpose. So I am working hard to train it further to recognize particular words that over time never seem to be typed right. But I've made a lot of progress in terms of becoming more efficient and having maybe about a 75% accuracy rate for the words that I speak. Now, one complication for me was, at the same time that I was mastering voice recognition, I was making a transition, kicking and screaming, from WordPerfect 5.1, which was my old friend that I had been working with for a long time, was very comfortable with, to WordPerfect 8. And I was told that you can't stay with the old-fashioned WordPerfect. perspectives on use, I didn't want to talk about regional accents. I have a distinctive Southern accent. So, and this software, unless you train it repeatedly by going back through the exercise of speaking particular words into the memory of the software, it will require that you modulate your speech in a particular way. So as I want to say, that instead of the mellifluous melody of a type or a Virginia accent, everybody's going to sound like they're from New Jersey. So you take, for example, water. I say water. It's taken me a while to get up the software to recognize what water is. Water. What's saying water? Just scratches you up. So, keep in mind, you're going to have to deal with regional speech patterns. For example, I've always had difficulty with the word on. I don't like saying on, but when I say on, I get a LL. So one compromise I've made is when I get to ON, I type it. I just don't like saying on. That's my preference. A funny example from a contracts exam a few weeks ago occurred. When you use voice activation, you're not going to get typos in the classic sense of misspelled words because spell check's built in. But you might get some funny decoding problems. I had on a question involved sale goods article 2, so the word sell appeared. And of course, I was in conversational style dictating it, and I said the buyer and the seller had a contract to sell widgets or some such thing. Well, the exam question was written not with the word S-E-L-L, but with S-A-Y-A-L-L. Two words there. And some of my students started to laugh. And when I saw the typo and announced it, I then understood what was happening. How does sell become say all? Say all. Say all. Sale. Sale. So that a southern drawl becomes two words. Needless to say, my students thought it was very funny. In any event, you can, based on your own regional dialect, cope with the, I guess I would call it that this software is drafted with the kind of neutral speech that you see in network television. So it is liberating to not depend on other people's deadlines, the odd hours you can be here composing. And it also tempts you to wait till the last minute in the sense that you know that if you're facing a particular deadline that you can work on it and make your corrections, your work every day, and voice activation into your hard drive, print it up yourself. You've got your own sort of self-contained technological world, and you don't need other people. So it does enhance my productivity by loosening up my schedule. But it also, at the same time, you are faced with the temptation to wait, knowing that, well, worst comes to worst, the day before I can finish up. So just keep in mind that might introduce behavioral changes on your part. But all in all, I think it's very worthwhile undertaking to do. And the best of all worlds, we will maintain our individuality, our own rhythms of speech will remain distinctive, and everybody's productivity will be enhanced.
I'm Grace Mills, the Assistant Law Librarian for Public Services at the Law Library of North Carolina Central University here in Durham, North Carolina, and I've been using Dragons for less really glad when we got it. We had one training session with our person, Gregory Clinton. It was less than an hour. We were able to get our voice activation, well, actually I should say, the other 3 people with me were able to get that voice activation. Mine took a little bit longer because I found that I have to really make sure enunciating my words.
I'm Michelle Perry. I'm the academic support specialist at North Carolina Central University School of Law. Primarily, I work with students a lot during the day, so I'm really busy and really on my feet. I'm a pretty good typer, and my thought process goes directly from my head to my fingers in that way. But he asked me to try it, and so I tried it. And I did find some really good uses for it. It was really easy to set up. All I do is kind of go through the 30-minute process for it to learn your voice, which is not much tedious, but I think it's well worth trying to get used to your voice. I think you should, when you are during a training, make sure that you enunciate very clearly. We all have a tendency kind of, when we're speaking in a general tone, to slur our words together or to just talk in a regular conversational tone. The computer wants you to speak in a very direct and clear manner. So that might be a little bit difficult for some people. I think it's easy to get over. After I started using it, I think I could find a lot. I thought I found a lot of different ways to use it. Particularly my favorite way to use it is to take notes on it while I am reading or preparing for class. It's writing everything, getting everything down on the computer. It's really pretty accurate, I would think. Or if it's not, it's sometimes fun to see what is coming up with it. And additionally, you can also use your keyboard to type in other things you want to edit it as well. I think the best way to use math guidance, actually speaking, is whatever way that you can incorporate it into your laptop or your teaching style. Like I said, I like to use it when I take a note or when I prepare for class because that frees me up so that I can read, but I can speak or read out loud the sentences that I want, and then I can go back and edit or create an outline correctly for the student.
Okay, let's see if I can do this again. Okay. What I tried to show in the tape was a varied usage of the system. Some people couldn't type real well, some people could type well, and the different applications that they used it for. What I'm going to do now is just only show you about 5 minutes of a demo of the software, and then just open up for questions and discussion. As I mentioned, some of our faculty got laptop computers this past year, about 8 of them. And we had troubles initially trying to get Dragon to work on the laptop. Eventually we had to update the RAM on the machine in order to get the machine to work. And it took a while to, once you go through about an hour worth of training, and sometimes the computer would lock up, or when you're trying to save your speech files, the computer would just lock up and you have to shut down and restart. The best way that we found out to use it once we increased the RAM was to set the screensaver for an hour and a half. So there's no other activity going on the computer. Dragon can be used by itself, or it can be used with Corel or with Word. Once it saves the files in a rich text format, and you can import it into Corel or Word. Corel or Word. Okay. There are also some shortcuts. You can set up shortcuts for your keyboard. For example, I set up a shortcut to turn Dragon on by hitting my F8 or F12 key, and that just turns the microphone on. When I hit F12, you'll see the microphone up here in the corner, far corner, right here. You'll see that come up, and you'll see a yellow light, and that says that we're ready to go. The other shortcut, and I'll go ahead and start demonstrating that. As you can see, words are just coming on the screen. One of the things that we, let's scratch that, 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 go to sleep. One of the things that we learn is that sometimes you're thinking about what you want to say, and you don't want, if you stop mumbling something, the voice recognition will pick up all types of stuff and just start writing its own, its own lines of information. So scratch that allows for you to correct it. The other item that allows for you to use it with some ease is to tell the computer to go to sleep. And when you're ready to work again, there's a command I'll use in a moment to tell it to work. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to read a paragraph with punctuation, and then we'll just open up for question and answer. In order to get the computer to get started again, just tell it to wake up. I am currently dictating this text with Dragon Naturally Speaking, period. Wake up. I am currently dictating this text with Dragon Naturally Speaking, period. With Dragon Naturally Speaking, comma, I am able to dictate text continuously and at my natural pace, period. In fact, comma, speaking in complete phrases helps the software recognize words more accurately. Explanation point. Scratch that. Explanation point. Scratch that. Explanation point. Go to sleep. When something like this happens, you can train the computer to, you can just tell it to go to sleep. Scratch that. Scratch that. Scratch that. Scratch that. Scratch that. Scratch that. Explanation point. Go to sleep. At this point, you can go up and train the word. Go up to Tools and Train Words. Click the exclamation point. Explanation point. This is real life. And what happens, I have a presentation running in the background, so my memory allocation is being drained a little. So let's cancel that. Next paragraph. Scratch that. New paragraph. I'm going to read again. Let's see. Scratch that. Scratch that. I am currently dictating this text with Dragon Naturally Speaking. Correct that. And as you can see, the options. Let's go back up. Correct that. Period. Go to sleep. Anyway, what happens is sometimes as you're using Dragon, it will add words to it, and you just have to go back in and correct it. Let me correct this punctuation, and then to show that it actually works, and then we'll move on. Wake up. Period. Go to sleep. Here it asks if you want to save the document. Let's just say yes. And we're going to save it in rich text document. And just put it there. Then this is the prompt that always asks you if you want to save your speech files. And you just say yes. And the next time around, when I use this, it should load my files.
Email running in the background, you know, the professor might want to get that pop up through email. Will that cause those kind of errors as well?
What happens is whenever you have other applications and you're trying to multitask, it's going to cause some interference. You can, if you get the pop up, then you may want just to tell your application to go to sleep. And sometimes you may have to reboot. The technology is getting better, but it's not 100% yet. I think we're at the beginning of the curve, and in the fall we're going to use the dictate machines where you actually have the handheld machines that you dictate into, and then you just plug it into your computer, the files. That machine also allows for the dictations to be read back to you, so you can hear what you've said and what's recorded. In this machine, I have 64 megs of RAM. Now we have the question and answer session. Is there any other questions? We have a little time. Yes?
You talked about having to save your speech files. How long do you have to keep saving for it to remember? I mean, I can see a point where suddenly your 10 gig hard drive is full of your speech files, and at some point you're going to have to start deleting them. Have you run into a problem with that yet, where if you start deleting it, it gets what you told it to do?
No, because some of those files are written over. That 40 megs hard drive space is designed to maintain your speech files. It's not, at this point, your speech files are not appended in its entirety. It's appended with any corrections that the computer had interpreted for certain words. It's more like building a vocabulary for speech recognition. Yes?
I guess I'm reminded of Samuel Johnson's Dancing Bear. The amazing thing is not that it does it well, but that it does it at all. I have Dragon, naturally speaking, which came in a version of Corel 8 that I got rather inexpensively. It did not come with the sort of microphone that you described, so I just got a generic microphone and plugged it in. And I found after a while it learned my voice and could give me about 75–80% accuracy, which was okay. But what I found happening was the very thing that was happening with you up there, that as I was dictating, I was obsessed with correcting. And I was constantly scratching that and correcting that and everything like that. And after a while, the flow that one wants to get from dictating was just totally lost as my mind shifted to the correction, to the process, away from the content of what I wanted to be talking about. It occurs to me that the better way to use it is just to take your eye off the screen and start talking, and then after a while go back and see whether it got anything or not. Any comments?
Actually, that's Professor Beckwith, the guy who spoke the longest. He had that similar situation, and what he ended up doing, like in doing his exams, like tabbing and getting spacing correctly, what he did was he went ahead and just spoke his questions and the selections for his answers and went ahead and just dictated everything he wanted to do, and then went back and just made the correction. That saved him a lot of time and just going ahead and just making corrections from opposed to taking the time at each interval when it miswrites something, trying to correct it at that moment. So that's probably the ideal way of doing it, just allow your thought process to continue and just to dictate into it, and then just come back and make the corrections.
So in his proofreading, he missed sale.
Yeah, you can say yes.
Can you make your corrections with the keyboard instead of using the square?
Yes, you can. You can just you can use the keyboard interactively with your voice. So you can use both mediums. Yes.
I use Dragon along with a couple of other products for voice recognition, and that was the solution that a number of professors at my institution went to. And the problem was they were making the corrections with the keyboard and not training the machine, not training the software with their voice. So the same words were constantly keyboarded in because of not taking the time to do the training. One of the things that you guys talked about was just the training up front time. That's something that I think with my experience, I didn't emphasize enough, and people were frustrated after a while because they would use it for 2 or 3 days, and then they kind of lost actually and say, this doesn't work. And not realize that as you make mistakes, you really do have to train that machine or your dialect, the enunciation, or whatever mistakes that you make.
We were real careful to present this in such a way to the faculty that there was a learning curve involved, and that as when a lot of us who've been around computers a long time remember the older versions of WordPerfect or new software, how it took you a while to learn how to use it. I had to tell those stories to the faculty and condition them to know that it may take you a while to get voice recognition to the level that's really efficient for you. But once you're there, it's just smooth sailing after that.
The question, the statement made here about taking time to recognize the dialect, and the professor in the tape said, certain words, he seemed to say certain words that would never learn. You have a different accent. Is that your experience?
That's been my experience with Beckwith for like the word on or water. Those words he tried to train, it just didn't take. And that may be that's unique to each individual. Or maybe words that the computer just doesn't pick up from your voice.
I'm just saying, like, I'm from the South too, and so you see a lot of words that are different from where I now live in the Midwest, where I think that software is aimed at people in the Midwest.
Yeah, the Northeast. My experience has been that it's somewhere like New York, North, that is their baseline that they were from. So for those of us with a Southern accent, it was very difficult.
New York North and Westchester, exactly in that area, and we have the same issues. That we have certain faculty who have been using it for a long time, and I really try to impress upon them this training period. Number one, that we shouldn't even install the software while they have class. This would be a summer project.
Yes.
If you would train every day and for at least a couple hours a week. Otherwise, it was not easier for them than just handing something they hand up to their secretary.
We had a few faculty who thought as soon as they got it out of the box and loaded it up, it was going to be 100% accurate. And those who tried maybe after 2 or 3 hours, they gave it back to me and said, I'm not interested in it. But those who have, like Beckwith, he clocked at least 12 hours of training, but that was just to get it to the point where it was comfortable for him. There are some people who say that they advise people to block off 24 hours or more. But as the software gets better, as well as the technology gets better, that learning curve is diminishing. The newer version of Dragon, with the legal suite and some of the amplifier headsets, the training time is around, opposed to a 30-minute reading, you read for 15 minutes. And the training time for the voice activation is less than 12 hours.
So this is 12 hours of
continuous training.
So is there, do you have any statistics on, what's the average, is that the average?
When I was talking with the dealer from Dragon, he said the average amount of training for people now with the new version is around 14 hours. And he, Image Consultant, and their web address is image-management.com. They use Dragon a lot at, I think at Duke University Medical Center as well as Duke. And he was saying that the training time was around 12 to 15 hours.
When you look at scanners, when you scan a page and you go through OCR, there are so many words that you have to have basically proofread it to make sure that page is correct. And a lot of people argue that just have a secretary type it, and it might be better. So what I'm wondering is, the 12 hours you're talking about, the 14 hours, is that just to get it to, in one paragraph of, I don't know how many words, to still correct a bunch of it?
The 12 hours is more like to get the software to recognize your voice and speech pattern.
I see. But then you still have corrections to make in every paragraph?
You may.
Okay.
And that's going to be dependent primarily on the way you speak. Now, there are some people who are using it who make very few corrections.
The one that you just demonstrated was a couple of trouble with the explanation and that.
The explanation point.
Right. Those things. You find that in time those things are corrected?
Those things are corrected. Now, I don't use Dragon. I don't type enough, or I don't do enough writing now. I'll do more of that in the fall, and that's what we're going with the dictate machine. The more typing you do, and in my case, I type very fast too. The more typing or the more speaking you have to do, or the more writing you have to do, the better off the software is for you.
May I ask a question about the training? I understand the first part of the training is reading paragraphs that are pre-prepared, and therefore the machine knows what is supposed to be there and thus can recognize your voice against the standard. Now, thereafter, when you're freely dictating and you're saving that to your voice files, how does it know whether it has correctly or incorrectly transcribed what you said? Will you be just preserving more mistakes if you do that?
Well, if you just save the file without making the correction, you are preserving more mistakes. So you have to train the word, like if you make like the explanation point. At that point, I should have gone into the correction mode and trained the explanation point at that time. Because I was running two applications at the same time, I got that error message. And if I just use one application, it will correct it, and the next time I saved it, that explanation point will print out the explanation point.
One thing you should make sure that when you're in a bad session, if you would rather save it and actually save it. If you don't want to save all the mistakes at the end, that will come out in the future. So every time you exit mistakes,
That's a very good point. Like if you have a lot of mistakes or if you had a bad session, don't save your speech files.
I can say one other thing that people would also, if you, I talked earlier with Greg, we want to make sure the version gets supports the session symbol and paragraphs. But the version we got didn't have it, which ways it did. So I called it Dragon. They said that there's an error. I called them later and said something I would also call it. So we patched it on the That's one thing to share with you guys. Before you gave it to them, because the person we had to use the template, she doesn't type. She had problems with this. And she was trying to say section symbol, paragraph symbol. And she got very frustrated, very violent. She was very frustrated when she used it. And so we were working. But also, when Greg was demonstrating like scratch that, if you may have noticed, you were pushing
say that at a certain point of irritation, frustration, we don't understand. And also has to do with background noises. No, that's not true.
Do you notice any difference between men and women's voices as to whether trainings?
She has very deep voices.
Actually, I've noticed that some of the women at the school, it picked up better for some strange reason. Like you saw on the tape, some people say it only took them only took them an hour.
I experienced the same. We have two people in the house, and I took me much less time to train. We set it up with numerous users on a public machine, so that students, disabled students particularly, could use the software. And we have 5 users, I guess is the top that you can do it. The technician and myself, we recognized my speech pattern much more quickly than they did. And we're from the same place.
One other observation about the accent, not only I didn't use Dragon, I used the IBM.
The VO voice?
The VO voice. It has the same regional bias, by the way. It's the same verbiage centered in Rochester. I think that's where the IBM folks were that did the basic training on it. But the other thing that it responded very negatively to is I have problems with sinus congestion sometimes, and that absolutely caused it fits. If I was having a day when my nose was stopped up, it could not understand that every third word was said. And so I had to be very selective about when I used it, because there were days when I just knew if I turned it on, it would work. And so it was very sensitive to me.
I'll tell you, one of the biggest approaches that I took with voice recognition software in Columbus School of Law was that I utilized the concept of laptop technology opposed to desktop technology in your approach. I look at laptops as being the ability to have mobility, be able to take to the box in remote locations on travel and actually work as if you're in the office. I use a desktop as an example of a desktop scene or a carol where you're actually stationed in a position where you're here. Voice recognition software, again, making a decision on whether you would have the option of having that desktop being at that location, or do you want the mobility to be flexible and move around with this unit. I took the approach with that idea in mind with voice recognition software. Do you want to be able to sit back, relax, and speak into this microphone, or would you like to type, or do you want a variation of both? And it was somewhat successful with several of the professors at the law school. And one of the things that I emphasized was the learning process. If you notice, we were all just laughing when you said, scratch that, go to sleep. Say, good dog. Think of the concept of your dog. You get a puppy, you have to teach it to sit and walk and move and fetch that. You have to constantly train this pup into a disciplined dog. And I took that approach with the professor to say, those who have pets, look at it in the same way as having a puppy. And this is how you approach this software. And it actually worked quite well with several. I say about 6 out of 9 took that effective approach. Of course, they all had dogs, so that's really great.
Using the command entries.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that concept, using that concept in the training process, and the theory behind the fact that they love their pets to death, and they look at how their pets have grown in their life, and I tell them that this voice recognition software can be a pet to you. You just have to take that approach to it.
I think that the important thing is to realize we're at the early stages of the technology, and it's only going to get better, and it's here to stay. So those who spend the time now, but we're all learning this new technology, and there are going to be a lot of, I guess, the learning curve is going to be pretty high for now. But I think as we get going with it, the learning curve starts to diminish.
Dragon establishes a software action for Russian computers. That's those are between that very nicely with one professor's experience. So we get early users, and she was happy with it, and she was talking to everyone. So we're waiting a little while to try it. And I'm hoping that they'll try this summer and see what their experience is. There are some students who tried it and really were happy.
Can I ask you some footnotes? What does it do footnotes?
Actually, we hadn't gotten to that point. I hadn't had an experience with that. Dan, had you gotten an experience with that?
I haven't either yet, but that's going to be a big one.
Yeah, sure. What you have to do is you go into your windows and tell it, open a certain window and then click this, click that. And I find it easier just to do that myself by shortcut. Yeah, you can do it. If you tell it, click, this will open, click and come down.
Yeah, the Navigator program works through the menus, or some of them work. The IBM one also will take certain functions in Word. I don't know if they have wired in to do Word perfect, but if you're in Word, there are some commands that the command, and it's a separate program, it's a separate piece of software that also comes with the package. And it knows, to do in paragraphs.
Insert footnote.
It will pick that stuff up. It's got some, I don't think it's full commands there, but it is some.
You're running this other program simultaneously with Dragon. And do they ever?
Actually, in that case, like with the word processor, you can go directly into WordPerfect. Just run it directly from
And once
WordPerfect.
you're in WordPerfect, the other program, what knows?
Actually, you open it up and you open up WordPerfect, and there is an icon that allows for the microphone to come on, and you don't have to open up Dragon. You just open up WordPerfect, and it's already embedded.
There's one like that for Word.
The IBM product is for Word.
The IBM product is for
The IBM product is built around Word. Yeah.
We use Dragon with Word.
So, yeah, I think either one of them will work with the other, but IBM tailors their default word processor that they expect you to use, and that it will input directly into its Word. And Dragon is paired up with WordPerfect, so what they expect you to use is WordPerfect. I don't think there's really much difference in terms of the quality of the two programs. I may be wrong.
The last report said there are it's like a percentage. Like when you're using Via Voice with Word, percentage is about the same as when you're using Corel with Dragon.
Right.
But going to the other one, using Via Voice with WordPerfect, is difficult, a little more difficult. Using Dragon with Word is a little more difficult.
And by the way, don't do both of them.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't do both, because they make changes to the word processor. And if you get both of them in there, both Dragon and the Via Voice in there, it will really mess up the word processor.
I don't know if this will help you at all, but my research led me to believe that the IBM Via Voice works well with IBM technology. It works quite well with the IBM technology.
Yeah.
I think other than that, it's strikes a different house.
That just that problem now that you're saying that to me.
Yeah. If you put both of them on there, yeah, I found that out.
Yeah, I
You
just
don't want to
installed
do
the
that.
whole word processing package.
Yeah, you basically take it out and start it.
Now in the fall, I understand that Dragon is coming out with its own word processor, more expanded word processor. So that should be interesting.
Another thing, just with the experience you all are having with having installed those, because I've had that also, I learned real early the importance of backup.
Yeah.
Because those voice files, I had one woman in particular who spent hours training the machine and crashed. And I didn't have to anywhere else. Yeah, so she had to buy a new machine and she had to retrain it. So you really want to try and save those backups. So save the cars on that.
The one other thing about the training that I learned as I was going through is that half of the training is training the software to recognize your voice. The other half of the training is the user learning to speak more clearly. I mean, you mentioned that a couple of times, but you really do learn to enunciate words more clearly when you're going to be a little bit more emphatic